Fils in the Café Partouze took a long drag of his reportedly several lights and said, "Mais qu'est-ce que c'est que Collins?" But what about Collins? What about Collins, indeed? And what is Collins? And what is this that Collins, to be true to the Gallic Baroqueness? Collins, or Colline, as he was dubbed by those in the know in the 6th and sometimes the 5th, was to the French in many ways what Hill was here. Imposing, glum, up when he was up. And yet, also, in his many trips between the two, he was the colon that joined mid-century Anglo-centric experience to its progressively more tell-informed continental agenda. Still, my procedure is unlikely to proceed unless grounded in the kind of methodology which has become unfashionable in recent years, and I am not one to rock the boat. Permission was not gained easily from the various widows and widowers. After all, what is a fine lie, as Wilde said? Simply that which is its own evidence. In late spring 1964, Michel Foucault leaned over the arm of his chair to Noam Chomsky, wiping slowly at his reportedly Tom Ford glasses, and said, "Mais qu'est-ce que c'est que Colin?" In archaic French, Colin was a phrase commonly used to dismiss a troublesome or persistent interlocutor, an abbreviated form meaning roughly that you may go to Laon, the commune in north-central France known for its aggressive production of wicker. In other words, get lost. And in many ways, Collins is lost to her English audience. Unjustly neglected by all the major publishing houses, we are now at a point where she literally cannot be read. It is our loss. Colin is also, of course, a hake. It is time for a reassessment, in my view, and in this short time, and there should be time for questions at the end, I can only begin by sketching an incunabula. In my broad strokes, I hope to posit Collins not only as according affective principles to a background of late-stage synchronicity, but also, crucially, not. And I would like to operate whilst insisting on dialectic, quadialectic, as only one resource at our disposal. An abbreviated form, end quote. Carnac, Struthers, Willoughby have taken this all to be apparent, but I would like to suggest Collins is playing the long game. Take this from 3/4 through Bereavements. I am not certain it is about to be new, but last name creation gives what? This is not Solers, not even Soupeau. But to begin, Deleuzian principles, rarely applied here, are not applied, or not without trepidation. But what if? Can we begin to cite and recite the city in such a space? I am far from the first person to suggest this, so I will proceed with humility as far as possible, given my nature. What is plenary? What does it actually mean? Cage is worth noting here. In his Ross Kent lecture, we learned that silence, but there is no need to complete the quotation in many ways. We in fact learn that silence, take it on. And in the passage which follows, we are treated to the famous elaboration, some 13 pages at least in my edition. Yet, I, for one, find this wanting. In late spring 1964, Alfred Whitehead turned to C.P. Snow in Brown's Café, Oxford, skewered a large piece of his reportedly sunny side up and said, "But what is a hake?" All of this is not to say, and there should be time for questions at the end, that my thesis would not be improved by what Latour has called, with characteristic wit, facts. Yet, to supply them would seem to undermine the very discursive structures I have been seeking to hold up, to pin to my epistemological mast worryingly transcendental colours. What is it? Can it be named? Can it be cited or examined within a framework which is not quickly and frustratingly dissolved by the canny reader response theorist? Can it temper our beef with lyric? Can it side with the marginalised? Can it, at a push, be brought to bear on the Brexit process, say? Here is a bit from Lanterns. The cold of it, the going cold, the twice-cocked ride about the paddock, the wasting of last year's cookbooks. What cookbooks, we might ask? Perhaps there is a clue in the paddock, the way it elides itself, the superficially reactionary line break, the cold of it, the going cold. How does this strike us? And does it? And would it similarly for your gran, or your PA, or your unwelcome and indeterminate uncle? And what of the coquettish twice-cocked, with its connotations of rice and other hard grains? It is not just the reader, perhaps, that needs soaking. Thesis, antithesis, aporia. There must be another way to speak like Strawson, but it is worth recalling, too, for the sake of inclusivity, that while a rose is a rose is a rose, it is not a conclusion. The putative and in many ways punitive objections of the so-called Middlesbrough school are well established. We lend easy credence to the idea that we are ourselves, separate and also intimately entwined with the normative features we like to call us. When the tab is settled, we must content ourselves with reversion to type, the paradox identified, I hope, with care, the leitmotif of this, and the meat, and in many ways, the conclusion of this reading. There is no time for questions.